Yes, in a long, long time. We're with you, coming straight at you. It's the Market Sniper. That's right. We're going to take you to a world, a special kind of new world thinking thing. That's what we're going to do in this video. We're going to take you into a world where we are looking at commodities, things. In other words, we're going to say, never mind all this financial engineering and the woo-woo stuff. We're also going to put technology aside. You can't really do that, can you? But we're going to put it aside for a moment. So this is an exercise in, if we went back to things, that people use, make, do, commodities, aspects, how is the world set up? And we are going to, in an inverse digitization realm, remember, sweeping hits to banks and everything, you could find yourself wanting those things, those physical commodities and things, food, agriculture, wood, various other items that you actually need on a day-to-day basis. And these higher aspirational social medias and electronic this and technology that and a new phone and all of these gadgetries could become secondary unless they dare to start a fire, help you listen to a radio, a wind-up radio. That's a different kind of tech. So we're talking about commodities. How do they stand? And the big thing that's been happened, big news recently, news alert, news flash. So Saudi will take payment in other currencies apart from the dollar. Okay, opening up the yuan to get more proliferated, other things to get more proliferated. Russia and Turkey are looking at gold-backed cryptos. You used to get a little democracy present when you went for one of those. Ask our friends in Libya about how the Grand Cartel took it upon itself to export a little bit of democracy to you when you started getting independent ideas regarding the petrodollar. But now, of all people, the Saudis have been given the nod. It's time to move on. The money is moving from the West, in my opinion, to the larger Middle East, and also another region that we'll think is a little bit of a safe landing space aside from China, but within striking distance. Yes, that's where we think the capital formation is going. And if you watch our Reset Sniper vids, you would have also seen those couple of thoughts, unbaked, being formed thoughts on the back of my little bikey saw down the cliff rides, and you would have seen me being followed by a drone and some great footage. Don't forget, go to the Odyssey, get some library coins, go and do some of that. But let's get on with this presentation. If you're watching, hit the like button. It helps us. We really appreciate it because it means it puts us up, and we're trying to stream. We're trying to give you something current now with no ads. Okay. So, without further ado, let's go have a look at some of the facts. These are Googled facts. They're not perfect. They're going to be Googled. Some of the data is 1920. Some of it is, when I say 19, I mean 2019. Most of it is 2021 and 22. So there may be variances. And if there's commodities that you would have liked to have seen, and we haven't done them all, this is a big ass job. So we've done what we can for this. Big shout out of thank you to my data research team from far, far away. That's right. Alexei Rudenko, working far, far, far afield, has done some great work for us over here, and as well as myself. So let's get straight into those. Volumes of production, basis type products that are found in some of the BRIC nations and the USA. So if we have a look at if everything is based about commodities, who's the big bosses in what areas? So let's go straight to the Excel spreadsheet and have a little look. So we're going to do some number crunching today, and we're going to do it by some of your favorite commodities. Who is bringing out the ground, doing natural gas, energies, etc. Who is doing what? And if you see the pie chart, to bring in a bit of color, a little bit of Agent Orange in there. Yes, that is by population. So a lot of what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the absolute number for a particular country. And then I'm going to show you how much that is by population of that country. So it is essentially the higher number divided by the population of that country. Just to talk about population, let's just show you, if you go in to have a look at the pie chart, as I grab my pen to allow me much scribbling and joy and glee as I go into Koki mode, you can tell that the two biggest population nations here are at the moment, and we'll go with the light blue, China at 38% and India at around 38% of the countries we are comparing. This is not the full globe. This is BRICS, Russia, Brazil, South Africa, India, and China. And then it's the USA. And we've included, for a moot point, Japan. So it doesn't include Euroland. It doesn't include most of Africa. It doesn't include Latin America, apart from Brazil, of course. It is the BRICS primarily against the USA. So population numbers, 336 million, the USA sitting in there. So 336 if we're talking in millions. China, 1,426 million, which is known as 1.4 billion. So that's 1426 in the Agent Orange, the Christine Lagarde fashionable color. And then India, 14210, so that's 1,410 million. And then Russia comes in at 147. So you can see the masses of differences in population. Sometimes you have to be reminded of these things by scale. You have to be reminded of these things by scale. Absolutely. And then Brazil, bigger than you might have thought, 218, but nowhere near the scale of India and China, but more likely to have a positive birth rate. In China's case, actually, they had a negative year last year, along with the old, needlecrafty. Who knows how many were dropping with that. South Africa, 62. So that is 62 million in the sliver in green. Relatively tiny compared to all these big lads. So the smallest component of the BRICS. And then Japan at around 3%, which is 125 million. 125. So we've got them all. 62, 125, 336, 1,426, 1,410, but declining the 1,426, 147 Russia, 218 Brazil. That's your population numbers. That's your population numbers. Demographics, bad for China. Pretty bad for the US and slowing down. Very bad for Europe, not part of this. Dismal for Japan. More nappies sold for adults in Japan than babies. Oh dear me. And then Brazil, South Africa, and Russia improving. Russia stimulating. Go making babies, he says Vladimir. Okay, let's get to gold. The one you all want to know about. Goldilocks. That's right. The precious metals. Currently, 180 tons coming out of the good old USA. So let's just clear up our face. 180 in gold coming out of America. That's right. Not a bad effort. Dwarfed by what we think production numbers are. So these numbers are good. When anything comes to China, there's going to be a guideline involved of 443. So the red in bold is the biggest, the leader. So that is the highest number of tons being produced by any one nation, and it's China. Of course, not included in is nations like Canada, Australia, and others, the Commonwealth and further flung. So this is BRICS versus America, basically. India, 20. Russia in blue, in bold, is number 2. So actually you have China as number 1 in this contest. In this contest of this list of nations. Second highest is Russia, 363 tons in that year. South Africa at 100 and declining. At its peak, South Africa, funny enough, in the 70s was 1,000 ton a year producer. Now it's down to 100 and falling down the ranks. This is a diminishing returns game, and getting gold out is difficult. They've gone 2 miles down in South Africa. Some of the deepest tech, people know how to dig holes down there. And then Brazil, 80. So India is actually quite a light producer, but a chronic buyer. So they've always been net importers of gold. And then Japan, a very paltry 7. It's a little island, it's a small land, it's not commodities rich, is it? So here you have 180 America versus the rest. Now I've done a total for you. You've got 1,006 tons coming out of the BRICS. So this is a total of the BRICS that includes China, India, Russia, Brazil, and South Africa. So total those up and you get 1,006. An interesting secondary number, and I'm not going to drop on this number every time, but while you're looking at this sheet, if you want to have a better understanding of what this means as well. So if we pivoted to the most valuable thing being gold, gold being real money, who has the money? And who has the production of that new money? So it's no longer about Apple and what it does and the surveillance society and all the tech companies that are bringing it. Now, we know that unfortunately isn't all going to go away. This is a technical thought, commodity-based discussion. We only have to go part of the way towards being more commodity orientated, and the big things will shift. This is not the saying that everything we value in the West is going to disappear. Services will cease to be useful, tech will cease to be useful. But it's an interesting concept thought, and that's what we're here to do. So if you look at the number of population, just out of curiosity, what's the wealth creation per population if gold is the measure? Well, you'll find that per person you're getting 0.54 millionths of a ton. So that's actually a thousandth of a kilogram. So we're apportioning fragments of gold that are coming out the ground to each citizen in each country according to how much they get out. So if they get 180 tons, that's 180,000 kilos. That's actually 180 million grams. How many millionths of a ton is it per citizen? 0.54. So 0.54 is the answer for America. The highest actually per population, because Russia, big landmass, not the largest population when you're comparing it to the States, which is about almost double, more than double Russians. So there's half the number of Russians. They are the highest. They're number one per population. South Africa, number two, given that relative to all these other nations, 62 million is a low population number, and it was a traditional mega gold provider. As I say, already in a steep decline relative to what they get out to the ground. So for all my goldie bugs, what you have is 1,006 tons versus 180 in the BRICS, and Japan negligible. So many of you would say, but Europe, but that, everything that has been stored and held. Of course, we've also not gone into the Middle East, who's holding. They don't mine a lot there, but they may have great stores therein. Rumors of, a lot of moving out of Switzerland into Dubai, Qatar, etc., coming out of the bullion movement. Follow the movement of where the gold goes, by the way. And the more people see the gold being valuable, the more they want it in a vault in their own country. So possession is 9/10 of the law. Hold it in your hand. If you're a government, hold it within your own borders and don't let it leave. The Chinese don't let any of it leave. None of their production makes it offshore. Okay, so let's talk steel. Steel allows you to do things. Let's go through this. 86, remember the Pittsburgh Steelers. That's right, that's where I always thought steel came from in America. I think it used to be the case, but a lot of blue collar there, but it's a bit of decline, not quite getting the same amount. 86 compared to 1,033, that is million tons, by the way, but I'm trying to keep the numbers understandable, so don't over fascinate. It's the proportionality that you want relative to other nations that makes this super interesting. By the way, I'm also watching your comments. Keep commenting and telling us which of what you think on each category item you think what it means. What do you think about that gold line item? 180 tons versus 1,006 BRICS versus America, especially if we're talking more and more about opposition or alternative currency systems. Are you going to take a gold backed? Will you trust the Russian government or a Turkish government? Will you trust any government? That's a question for the ages, isn't it? But would you take a gold backed currency over a dollar? Now that there's alternatives and people start to de-dollarize, if this starts to happen to be the case, what is the future of the dollar looking like? I'm looking at, love the accent, thank you, born with it. I'm watching Grayscale to see how far. Someone wants to talk crypto. Energy will be more valuable because of bigger computing centers for AI. We'll be getting to some energy, and America does better there. So understand this. This is not a knock America pitch. Love the American people. Hate all their governments, largely, like them, most instances. And there are some things that have been strong in the States of a commodity nature, and we'll see those in a minute. But 1,033 in China, 118 in India of steel, 76 almost. Russia almost matches America, massive land mass, half the population. So you're being beaten by India and China. Brazil does about half, just under half. South Africa very small, and Japan makes a whole bunch of things, actually quite high, surprisingly high on steel. So all those Toyotas have got to come from somewhere. By population, China wins that as well. It comes second, sorry, and Japan wins on the basis of having a lower population than China. So Japan relatively quite high at 96, but 1,033. You're getting more out of the Chinese. I think there's an error in that. I think there's a zero missing there. That's 0.07. Sorry. Pretty sure that the Chinese would still be up front. So there might be a small error in their spreadsheet. Apologies for that. But biggest steel producer, China. Next biggest, you're looking at India. Next biggest, you're looking at Japan. And then you get to America at number 4. That's the key point. Aluminium, also needed for cars and many other things, making it 0.88 million tons. So this is million tons, 38.5. Just to give you a proportionality example, that's basically more than 40 times the amount of aluminium coming out of it. And this is a big thing to do with supply chains. Supplies, he says. I won't tell you the joke again for those of you that are long-time watchers. But supply chains coming under a lot of pressure and strain. Just finished reading Rijkaard's book. It's somewhere here. Shut down or closed down, I think it was. Very, very interesting. And the Five Eyes nations are looking to withdraw some of the more key areas and reduce reliance on China. So they realize these guys aren't giving up on that form of communism. Well, that's what they want us to think anyway. So 38.5 million tons coming out of China, dwarfing everybody else. But you can also see 3.55 million tons, 3.8 million tons out of Russia, coming in at second place. Russia 3.8 and China at 38.5, dwarfing America. So America is reliant on the rest of the world to a large degree on quite a high number of commodities. This is what you're going to start to realize, especially as we have this bifurcation and this picking fights and the confiscation of Russian assets. Hey, we're punishing you, you're bad. Well, what happens if you think the other guys are bad too, and you decide to punish them? All these decisions are designed to lay the footwork for the destruction of the dominance of the dollar. So the Saudis' action, the pricing, all of this is undermining the longer term, the destruction of the dollar. It'll take longer than you think because there's a lot of liquidity, there's a lot of understanding, there's a lot of systems set up about the dollar. But in time, you will see these alternatives becoming more and more interesting, more and more innovations. Stack toilet paper, says one of the mans. Good afternoon from Gibraltar. Yes, the man from the rock, the block on the rock, he says. I fear nationalization, says somebody. Stack eggs. Yes, they just don't keep very well. I'm stacking farm chicken. Very sad videos in South Africa where I'm kept up to date. Power being declined and entire boileries of chickens being destroyed and dead chickens being chucked out. Okay, let's carry on. Aluminium. So we're done with aluminium, and you can see that America is actually very small. It doesn't even get a full million tons of aluminium. Most of it is brought in. Nickel. Now, many people have spoken about nickel. Let's talk about Russia, by the way, in all of this. Nickel, 270,000 tons. 270,000 tons per annum relative to the US's 15. 15 does 270. 84 out of China. 84, let's change color here. 84 out of China, 270 there, 95 out of Brazil. So number 1 and 2 is Russia and Brazil at 95. Then you drop down to China at 84. You drop down, even South Africa has more nickel than the United States. And we have no number for Japan. In some instances, we can't get a number. Some instances, we assume it's a 0. So no numbers. 471 to the BRICS versus 15. In the nickel, in the game of global nickel, it's 471 versus 15. In the game of globalized aluminium, aluminum, as they say in America, I feel illuminated. 47.35 versus 0.88. You can see these are hard-hitting, useful things that have to be bought. What if, the question about this whole video is just a small question. What if things that take a lot of energy, that have to be dug out of the ground, are messy, dirty businesses where mining stocks and earth-scratching equipment have become deeply undervalued and underappreciated? What if we see a small revaluation towards those things that are moving up, that are pulling out that which we need out the ground, and a small devaluation in social medias where you get to puke and tell you how upset you are that your boyfriend, girlfriend left you behind and you should consider transgendering maybe next week, maybe life's nicer as a lady, etc., etc. All of that. What if that continues down and the stuff you can use that's coming out of the ground that requires men in hard hats to do dirty work, want to be paid more, requires a whole bunch of energy? Oh yes, how about this? By the way, rare earth minerals. Rare earth minerals. Going green is going to require a 13x in rare earth minerals. How about that? So you want to go watermelon communism? Great. Okay, dig up the ground a whole bunch more and be less green to support your new green initiative. How does that sound to you? Well, that's fascinating. It's fascinating to me. It sounds a little bit bent and crooked. But let's go back to those numbers. But these are the idea behind this exercise. What if those things you get out the ground that come with carbon taxes and bad scores and banking no one to lend to you? You're a nasty business. Oh, but we need your shit. We need it for the windmill. We need it for the solar panels. We need it for etc., etc. Battery cars, battery this, battery everything. I've got more chargers nowadays than I know what to do with myself. I could hang myself every day on a different cord for the rest of the year. I tell you what. Anyway, let's go back to the numbers. Nickel, 15. 84, 270. We did that one. Let's go to palladium. Palladium, tons of palladium. So 14 in the States, 74 in Russia. That would make it number 2. And number 180 is South Africa. In fact, South Africa and Russia rule the platinum complex of platinum, palladium, rhodium, all of these required and very rare minerals. So that is not a stronghold. Again, just off these, 154 does 14. BRICS versus America. Would you back a currency coming out of the BRICS nation that is agreed through all their leaders with 154 more rare palladium family metals, 47.35 to the US's 0.88 in terms of aluminium, 1,268 versus the US's 86. And when I say the US, I'm talking about this dollar. Would you back a currency that comes out of a place that is pulling that much more commodities out the ground? The truth of the matter is, something you can touch, something you can hold, is something that is real. As he goes and reaches for his favorite 1 kilo brick in his hand, the cardboard is getting all mangy, but boy, do I like taking it out and inserting it back in. 1 kilo of pure 4 nines XAG is good for me. Yes. Anyway, what do you think? What do you think? I want to know what you think. Rhodium went berserk years ago. Yes, it did. And I think it will go again. Falling wedge rhodium. Crack the bedrock. Yes, says Slyman from Deutsch. How dare you? 9 says somebody. Mini futures oil long. Miners to the moon. Yep. So the mining industry hasn't had a great time in 40 years. I'm thinking of the metals mining. Yes, there's been some commodity moves. Early 2005s and 6. There was some excitement, but we haven't really had the full-blown earth scratchers going to the moon yet. And boy, can they move too. They were the original cryptos. Mining exploration were the original cryptos before crypto was crypto. Copper. I just done this one just before this clip. That's why we're running a tiny bit behind. I said we can't do this without copper. I had to try find some numbers. We might have a clash of years. By the way, if you're welcome and you see this and you think you've got a newer, better number and you've got a source link and you want to help us improve the spreadsheet, because we'll probably get it out a couple of times, you're welcome to send it to us with your link. So copper. The US actually comes second there. So it's not all bad news. China winning at 1.7. You have quite strong India, strong Russia, and a pretty decent Brazil. And South Africa got something for their small population, relatively 65 million, if that's ever a small population. So copper, good on China, strong India, but US number 2 in that overall. So the BRICS have, even in a category that the US is pretty decent, 1,200 versus 3,831. If you're thinking of copper, gold, steel, all these commodities backing a currency and who's standing by it and who has it and is already producing it, are you going to choose the 1,200 or the 3,800? Well, it depends. There's other things to consider. It's not always number biggest is best. So I'm going to show you a couple of other things and then we will do something really interesting. We're going to take you to the stock market indices of the world and why I think the American indices are going to go into a dull, flat line, and there's going to be more capital formation elsewhere in the world. There's going to be new stock markets emerging in the Middle East. You can be sure Tel Aviv will be in there somewhere with all the stolen tech. And you will also have the place that I think is going to do exceedingly well. We've discussed more detail. We have a trade coming out of that. That is the acceptable face of China when people are wanting to be close and potentially involved in China, but not necessarily listed in a communist state. So who will that be? That is Singapore. That's right, Singapore. We see a good period coming for Singapore in the Middle East in terms of capital rushing to those areas, listings, stock markets, etc. Okay, so volumes of production. Let's do oil. So the US is a winner here against these nations. Bear in mind, we haven't included any of the South Americans that are big pullers. We haven't got any of the Arab states in here. So this is just for this little UFC contest match between America versus the BRICS. For where would you put your money for future commodity currency? Yes, if it comes. 711 million tons in US, and that gets it the bold red. 199 in China, 34 in India, but low. Russia, 536, second, but actually first by population on half the population. Then you have Brazil, 157. But if you take the two, it's still a loss for America, 926 versus 711. Many people saying in the comments right here, I'm watching your comments. Thank you for hitting the live stream. Comments! Yes, yes, fool that algorithm. Fool them, fool them, fool them. Say something, anything. 711 in the States. BRICS does 926. And that's one of the strong suits of America. Second by person. And Russia is the highest by person in oil. So Russia is a force in the oil markets. Yep, any thoughts on silver? I think silver is great. I think you should buy it. I think we are getting a right shoulder on the gold silver XAU, XAG, the ratio. But we are doing something different today. We're doing fundamental analysis. We're talking about numbers. We've got a man with a plan who did some great work for us. On getting some of these commodities together. Natural gas. So again, dominance. US is pretty powerful here in the gas market. You saw that with the Euro crisis. They blew up the Russian pipeline, in my opinion, best guess, so that they could be the provider of that. There's your economic terrorism right there. How to make friends and influence people. So do you think there's going to be a moral desire to maintain them if you now have a viable alternative that they can't launch a war against the entire rest of the world like they did against Libya? What do you think? What do you think? I don't know. Maybe not. I think people will tap dance on their grave if they lose their dominance in these currency wars. 964 is the biggest by far. However, Russia is strong at 719 and per person is stronger than the States. You have 2.8 million cubic meters per person in America. You have 4.9. That's right. You almost have 80% more gas per person in Russia. But of course, the absolute number is still slightly lower than the US. So Russia comes second on that, but gives a 965 for the rest of the world. That's the only one that America approximately matches the BRICS. Total. It's the only one on natural gas. And I put it to you, in terms of exploration and more scope for finding future avenues for that, you'll probably argue that the BRICS have more unexplored potential. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I'm guessing on that point. No idea. Coal. Let's talk about coal. So, I've mentioned to you before, South Africa was sending 700% more coal to Germany this winter in lieu of recent events following Russia and Ukraine and whatever your view is there, and not buying. Although it's come to light that many Chinese and Indian intermediaries, along with a good old Israeli in there somewhere, or a son of a politician, is actually buying energy and items through India and China and exporting it to Europe as well. And Russian stuff is still finding its way in there. But anyway, I can tell you that coal was going to from Richards Bay in South Africa to the US. And per person in coal, actually South Africa is the highest. 244 is the total. China, almost 4 trillion, 3,969 million tons. So I said trillion, I mean billion. So that's pretty big, bigger than the States at 523. And Russia is bigger in coal than America as well, some 60-70% bigger. You have Brazil at 435, which is not much smaller than the States. And then you have SA, then you have, my apologies, you have a South Africa at 6.2, my apologies, it was Japan, that was 244, I misread that, I got my columns confused. So Japan, funnily enough, I said it was South Africa, Japan per person actually has a fair amount of coal. Sounds so weird. I'm like, is that in the right column? I might have to double check that one, because it just sounds so weird. Nonetheless, coal, million tons, the total of BRIC nations, 5,239.2 versus 523. 10x. If it was a coal token, backed by coal, who would have the backing? The BRICS would win it. The BRICS would win it. So on this commodity shootout, by commodity, coal is stronger in the BRIC nations than it is. And China's just killing it. Cement, this is building stuff. So we're almost done. We've got one other thing of some output we'll show you as well. Cement, 89 million tons. China killing it again, 2,200. That's how they've been throwing up all these cities at such a rapid rate. 2,200. 320, Russia, which is still well beyond the 80 of America there. 89, 320. And even Brazil is close on the US's tail there. And SA at 55, which is about 60% of America. And then Japan, pretty low on cement. Pretty low. So if you've been counting who's winning these contests in terms of that, actually you'll see that in this first category of gold through copper, the US has 0 reds, which are coming number 1, and 0 blues. Until I added copper, so that's incorrect. I added that line late. So they've actually got they've got 1 second place on there. So they've got 1 blue following the addition of copper, which I couldn't start without. But if you look at the BRICS, there's plenty. China has 1, 2, 3, 4 reds. 1, 2, 3, 4. Plenty. So the commodity game in this world of BRICS versus the States is not going particularly well in terms of America's standing relatively. So as we consider following that Russia's move that had where they put their oil and gold behind their currency, boom, that was the end. That was the end of them being pushed around or bullied on their ruble. That was the end of them being bullied on the ruble. And that was a very smart move. And that's also focused people like me to start saying, what's behind your currency apart from leverage, debt, numbers in a computer that can go, poof, can't pay anymore, sorry, bye, inflation did ET, my derivative Ponzi did collapse, so bad, so sad, all our banks done, SWIFT system fail, we'll reset, you can have some UBI tokens, thank you very much for playing. Well, I don't like that so much. I don't like the possibility of that idea. I'd like something more behind my currency maybe. Who knows? Maybe it goes global. I don't know. Let's have a look at wheat and we'll do this quick. America wheat at 50. China at 134, India at 108, 134, 108, you're already looking at 226 versus 50 in the wheat index. Your daily bread, my friends, your daily bread. If you were having a backed currency on your daily bread, you would choose the BRIC nations over United States of America, which is the dollar. If you were choosing meat, you would choose the combination of the BRIC nations at 141 versus the 46.8. It's important to point out that the BRICS nations by population is actually around 3.2 billion people. That is being compared to a population of 336 million people. So you're talking almost a 10x on population. A lot of workforce that could be brought in to do a whole bunch of stuff, but also a lot of extra mouths for feeding. So we'll leave that point in the mix as well. Human resources. Human resources. Okay, so meat, sugar, 8.7, 34.2 and 38.5 for a total of 91.9 versus 8.7. So in terms of the sugar that gives you go, makes you high as a kite and put on weight, the Europeans are winning. My apologies, the BRICS nations are winning. So cars, this was just an interesting one thrown on. Car production. We know of Tesla and cars, 9.1 million cars for second place. China makes 26.1. I wonder if that includes how they've categorized the Teslas that are assembled there. I don't know. Japan at 7.7 and with the highest per person contribution to car making. That shouldn't surprise you. A relatively low population, 125. That's about a third, just under 40% maybe of the US. But the US is second by person and second in total to China at 9.1, with Japan snapping at its heels. Japan, not part of the BRICS nations, part of the manufacturing axis. Electrical energy. I thought I'd throw this one in. Electrical energy. So the total electrical energy that is being produced and generated in America, 4,406. 8,534 in the China. India, 1,714. I think they've got a lot more to do to roll out grid, but that's still a huge number. Russia, 1,100. For its population size, that's respectful. Respectable. I don't think there's too many people in Russia that want to switch off a light and can't, or switch on one and can't. So they have the electricity they broadly need. 654 for 218 million people in Brazil. Well, the favelas are a bit like the townships in South Africa. Not everyone maybe gets a light or a TV every time they want to, but it's probably getting there. And then 244, slumping with Eskom for 62 million, and then 1,000 for Japan. So the total of the BRICS in terms of power output, where you can do things, switch things on, electricity, 12,000 to 4,000. So America's still pretty dense in the power outputs. So that's it. That's the commodities. Now here comes the useful bit, because now I'm going to talk about stock market caps. We'll show you something different. Let's go to the main sheet, and then I will show you this visualization of stock market caps. So if you're sitting and you're wondering about currencies and money, and you're afraid about the future of the dollar, and you start to hear that the BRICS are going to bring out something, the BRIC nations are going to cooperate and bring out a currency, and maybe they're going to, where do you invest for the future as well? Is America always going to command this premium of everything? Well, I don't think so. The demographics aren't that good. You're now, peak boomer has retired. Q4 22. The normal graph, not the first, the fattest part of the curve of boomerdom, that kids of those returning war heroes. Peak retirement 2022 Q4. These guys have now stopped working. The middle of that curve, the pig is now in the python, and you're just having that big lump right now coming up. What do peak retirees do? They spend less, reduce growth, reduced earnings. They divest a whole bunch more, downgrade houses, sell stock portfolios, sell bond holdings, do a whole bunch of most uncomfortable things, especially when you have a super high PE valuation on your earnings that is better than anybody's else because you're just the best guys and you believe that you have the best accounting procedures, although you brought us Enron, you brought us FTX and the SEC that looked the other way but while having beers with him, all that stuff. Well, I think it's a long run dark period coming up on a macro level for stock market exchanges in the US generally. And I think you're going to fall a lot further. Opinion would seem to fall into such a category as human resources, says somebody. NGOs and corporations to distribute your UBI when the time comes. Yep, potentially. 10K in 1971 bought over 500 ounces in gold. Now in 2023, you get 6 ounces of gold for 10K. 6 ounces. And it's the price you pay, not that paper Ponzi price. Okay, so this is a beautiful visualization. I'm going to just show you by region the stock markets because I find this fascinating. So peak boomer is not good for... One second, my overlay tool has stopped working. Peak boomer is not good for the investment stock market environment, not at all. And as a result of that, got a malfunctioning drawing tool. They hate a live stream with an overlay and a website. Too much going on, too much going on. Sorry about this, guys. One second. I'm going to have to force a restart here. Go. Just go. We're losing people. Go. Hi guys, how are you? Sorry about that, we're back. Small malfunction there. So this is the global stock markets. This is the global stock markets by index and their scale, market cap. So the big Asian market caps. Here we are. Let's have a look at it. I'm a bit nervous of bringing the pen out. But Japan, let's see if it will do any damage. Japan, 4.9 trillion market cap. Then you have the big Chinese market caps. So you have Shanghai, Shenzhen, and Hong Kong, which is for all intents very much back in China. Hence why we have a bearish outlook on the Hong Kong dollar and what will come. So those three big boys, all making up part of China. Then you have India. A lot of upside growth, I think, still to come for Indian indexes. They've got better demographics. Indonesia have amazing demographics. They have the right age for many people in terms of youth. So demographics, if you're macro, it can always make a big difference. So India looks like it can go up a little bit for me. I'm a big fan of the Singapore Stock Exchange. So I want you to keep an eye on that guy, 639, 639. I think he's going to be the friendly face for investments in China that is outside of the communistic reign. And then, of course, Japan already is big, but they've got terrible demographics. They're locally supported. They're going to be living off their investments. They're stuffed with Bank of Japan debt that is paying very low interest rates, yet they're having to find money for increased oil prices, increased gas prices, increased wheat, commodities, and everything else that is grown in terms of prices. So some of that stock portfolio is going to have to go. So many people reference the 40,000 mega boom that was 1989 Japan. And then you still, to this day, have not run that level. That is very much like an experience that the American stock markets could end up having. An extended period of down, down, flat, down a bit more, flat, 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 down, little bit up, flat, 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 down, 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 little bit up, flat, flat, flat. Still well below high water marks. And that's going to be a difficult time. And you're going to have this net overhang of selling for people that are living off, getting more sick, experiencing adverse effects for medical events that they were coerced into, as examples, with expensive pharmaceutical and medical aid plans. So that's a little bit on the Asian stocks. So let's just take that off. Draw. Let's take you through the stock market caps. I'm going to be showing you a drawing. This is Europe. We haven't spoken about Europe. It's not included in this, but I like this for the potential of where I think exchanges will grow. I think that will grow. That's Turkey. Yes, Turkey, believe it or not. I absolutely think that's going to moon. That's Tel Aviv. And I think that and that will grow. In fact, all of these in gold are going to grow to replicate in time, quite possibly, these. I also exclude Moscow from the European blue, and I think that's going to grow with all of these. So I'd put it in the gold. And I would say if you're choosing a team for the future, lean right. Go east, my friends, go east. I think short, long. You can even, if you want to do brain dead trading, this is, look, we're trading. We're HVF Method. We're those guys. Book a call, themarketsniper.com. Go to the website. Learn. This is a clue that we are giving you for long-term macro positioning for where the capital formation is going to go. And I see migration of capital from here into here. This is your neon. This is your edge. The ambition, the 6G cities with their micropod coffins. This is all of it. MBS came and cleared out the old guard. Now you must be this modern new world. There, nightclubs and all sorts of things opening up, despite being the bone saw guy. This is the side you want to be on. And this has got commodities and will have tech a million times over in there. Commodities, very, very big. The new options on stock market, capital flow from the blue to the gold. And that's something you literally could buy a Straits index. That's the Singapore, and you could buy the Middle Eastern best companies, and it will self-eliminate the weaklings. Because indexed investing has served people very, very well and has become very popular. The problem you will have in America, where it is the biggest growth industry, is that those indexes, even with the self-eliminating, could go down, 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 sideways down. And I mentioned many times, I went over to the UK in 99 and it was 6,900 and some 50, 60, 70. And Tony Blair was bragging about the stock market. And today the FTSE 100 is 7,700. That is, my friends, almost a quarter of a century later. A quarter of a century later. 99 to 23. And you've done 7-7. In that time, as I mentioned with Mario recently when we were having an interview, in that time, the pound at its peak, now I'm not saying it was at its peak at the same time as the stock market was 6.9, but it was typically 160s, 170s. But at its very peak was actually 211 to the dollar. 160s, 170s was its norm. Today, it's good to be holding above the 120s, and it's got lots of downside watching. So your currency has gone 40 cents lower over 25 years. Your stock market has moved 10% over 25 years. And you used to buy a pint, as they used to call it, in Nottingham for 80p and in London for £1. And today you'll pay 5, 6, not get much change on a tenner. So tell me, where's my UK boys in the comments? Tell me now, how much for you and your mate to buy a pint of Guinness Extra Cold times 2? That's not your average pint, but on the tap beer. Give us your on your tap beer for 2 people. What are you looking at? In London. Give it to me in London. London will be the most expensive. If you're in the north, tell me what it will be at your local Wetherspoons, which should be the cheapest option. I'm looking at the comments to hear. So let's just finish this market caps. So South Africa 790. What do I think for South Africa? I think a bit bumpy. I think the BRICS is the best game going for it, but it does pull things out the ground. They do farm a lot, so they're almost self-reliant. That was the gift of apartheid almost. They sought self-reliance. They don't have gas and oil so much, but they learned how to crush coal, and they have a ton of coal. The problem is they're selling all the good grade coal to China and to Europe and destroying their power plants on low grade coal. So, you know, the management is pretty poor. Let's not put it, let's not polish that turd. So this gives you a sense of proportion of the American stock index, 18.4. So for example, the JSE 790, that's billions of dollars. So it's not yet a trillion. It's 0.8 of a trillion. This is 18.5 trillion. The NASDAQ is 7.5 trillion. Toronto is 1.7 trillion. It's quite interesting that to see for Africa and the Middle East. South Africa is still the biggest stock market by size. I would expect that to change. So if we took that, it's bigger than Moscow. So if we just included it, let's say I'm kind to my... If I included on that, I would expect this segment to do the best growth and to eventually take it out. Probably the Saudi Stock Exchange to surpass it, possibly Tel Aviv in time as well. But Moscow also to continue to do onwards and upwards. So that's a interesting little thing. So let's go back to the Americans and have a look, because I've done some maths for us there to have a look at how much per population market cap is there. And that's a really interesting pie diagram. So here's your, just by comparison, there's Brazil. Again, also smaller than good old Joburg, Brazil. And then you have other small players. I expect to see these advance, actually, and do okay through reset in a very vile position, a very vile period in humanity's time. Watch my reset sniper in terms of what I see coming, but I expect that to do well. Here's the great deflation. This is where a lot of the capital formation will depart and head for those other areas. At first, they'll be seen as high risk. At first, they'll be seen as dangerous. At first, this scale feels safe. But after many, many years of underperformance a la Japan, I actually expect that to go. So you're getting real macro themes today out of this live stream. It's a Monday. We're coming at you. We've done spreadsheets for you. We've put no ads on it. Give us a like right now if you're watching this. 287 people are getting smarter right now watching this live stream. Hit the like to thank us. We appreciate it. There's 188 and we appreciate it. Go to the website, themarketsniper.com, to book a call to see how we are aiming to build wealth transitioning through a reset time frame and how we are assessing and evaluating where the regions that will be best for you to have your money, to the point that you literally can grab an index fund that captures that geography. That is the South America, the North America, the Africa and Europe, and the Asia in terms of stock market caps. We kind of bypassed Australia. Australia is a pretty big one relative to the Commonwealth. A bit like, kind of this little bit under the scale of Canada, but pretty big, similar size. So significant, but the real value, I think, I've already highlighted. Singapore, Middle East, and to a degree, Russia. Can the Canadian and the Australian as commodity currencies, can they buck the American deflation. I think if I were forced to, I'd rather hold Canadian and Australian indices over American, if I were forced to, in terms of everything that's coming. Let's go have a look at that Excel spreadsheet and wrap up and show you everything we wanted to show you in terms of those market caps. So I've pie diagrammed this. There's a double count in here. So this is population, market cap per population. So the US roughly has 40. Let's go with a smaller pen. The US roughly has 40 trillion in market cap. And that's 40 trillion divided by 337 million people. So we can drop a million and we can drop 47, the 42, come to a number that is per human being in America, how much market cap is on their head for that stock exchange. And you tell me if that sounds cheap or expensive. Per 336 million people in America, there is $119,047 on every single person's head of highly inflated, PE multiple stretched, equity valuation fluffings. Much fluffings. Let me tell you that the bond market is far huger. And if we were doing this on bond market as well, that represented debt, you would be absolutely terrified. But let's not over scare you right now. Let's just talk market cap of the American equities markets. 40 trillion. 40 total trillion of NASDAQ. You've got it, the Dow Jones and the New York Stock Exchange, add it all up together. So let's look at China. 11 trillion stock market, per human, 7.7. Now that's not just mean China's cheap. I don't happen to think China's cheap because the productivity, the level of work, the level of wages, the level of income that they have is far, far lower still. However, it is coming up slowly, but I would be petrified by the reverse demographics, this net selling, the shelf of boomers, the pig in the python that are peak retirement, and they're going to keep coming off the line and keep drawing out more and keep needing more medical and pushing the medical and all the older, later life stage products, which is pharma, healthcare, all of those things up, up, up and laying demands. Never mind everything else that's happened that lays additional demands on that particular area. That market cap is going to go down. The stretchy valuations were part of the demographic bubble that was the boomer generation. That pig in the python that I keep referring to. So it doesn't mean China's cheap just because we're talking about 11 trillion and 7,713 per China person. But I would say it's significantly less. Let's have a look at India. India, 2.7 trillion. So I pointed to India as a market cap rising place. I pointed to India on that website saying these are going to go relatively up. They are undervalued for what they do. And they're entrepreneurial, they're often hardworking. 2.7 trillion, you have $1,900 on every citizen for its market cap of its stock exchange. That is low, my friends. That is low. Compare it to 119,000 of old people. I know you all Americans aren't all old people, but you generally are. Your population demographic bulge looks like that. Males, females. That's how it looks. And that's the pig that you got to worry about. And that's what's the problem in valuation here. So then you come to Russia. 447, not even half a trillion, with 250 odd million. Again, cheap. Not as cheap as India. You're going to get tech out of India. You're going to get energy and other commodities, platinum, palladium group out of Russia. So I could feel both will do well, but right now, as we are commoditizing more, I would actually say the Russian is possibly the better valuation. Of course, the population number in India is very, very high. It's 1.4 billion. So it does bring that 1.9, call it 2,000 to 3,000 on Russia, a little bit more into context. And in this period, you could argue the Russian might come before. Then we have Brazil, just through the $500 billion mark, 519. This is just a $500 billion. So these are billions, by the way. So 40,000 billions is 40 trillion. So that's $500 billion, 0.5, 2,380. If they could get their act together, culturally, sometimes in Brazil, I wonder. I love my Latino friends. But if you give me a choice, and we had this discussion about why Argentine and Turkey, both in high inflation environments, were maybe having more, the culture of worth ethic and is slightly different in some ways. I would want to see Brazil, and I think it can go up, but I would feel I might choose maybe one or two others before it. But definitely I'm not going into this one. So this is a decade long, where do I put my money discussion. Personality, responsibility is key. Gold is money. Currency credits. I laugh when people say I don't owe any money. Yes. You do, and they're going to take it all. Booze and cigarettes are the only thing that's cheap in Gibraltar, says somebody. There you go. Don't go to Gibraltar. You're going to become a smoking alcoholic. South Africa is actually surprisingly high by population. So South Africa is a curious place because it's actually very first and third world. There's a first world that you'll have a better standard of living than some people in California for about 25% of the price, and then you'll have an absolute slum of shanties. And the slum and shanties are a big part of that population number. So you'll have about 5 million living it up here, and you'll have 58 million in working poverty there. So you have, that's why you get to have this real cheap, but it comes with its own challenges, let's say. So $12,000 puts South Africa pretty high on the relative per head count, and they're still dividing by a big number, 65 odd million. So I wouldn't put the Joburg Stock Exchange, the JSE, as the most undervalued right now, but there's a lot of very first world, well-developed, well-accounted, etc., etc. While you might argue in some of the other, maybe Brazil, some things maybe just get a little bit flat. That's maybe unfair to Brazilians. I don't know. I think it's not cheap. Let's put it that way, relative to other valuations. And I've pointed to the Arabic, Middle Eastern, Turkic, Singaporean, and the Moscow as my favorites. Then we go to Japan. Currently just under 5 trillion. $39,000, 280 per person. And they did lots of needle crafty, and I think those people are going to get. And they're older. They're an older demographic than even America. So you have a $40,000 sustaining. You are walking around having to hold up a stock market, whether you're buying it to hold it up and or whether you're selling it to put pressure on your mates. You're holding up $40,000 worth of market cap as a citizen in Japan. And if you have a negative demographics and the market stays the same, you have to hold up more each day. And the same goes for America with its valuations. Just saying, what do you think represents value? The total of BRICS. The total of BRICS versus America. Let's do this. So let's say you don't really have an idea which of the BRICS you would go with. You're a bit nervous. Let's say you went for all of them. You did a slice by market. You would have 15 trillion, 15.5 trillion instead of 40. So a market that is about 40% the overall market cap of the others. And you would have per person in there $4,700 versus 120,000 market cap. And for every person who dies in America, which has a negative, let's say you have a negative growth rate, you have more market cap to hold up. Now people can say, but AI and robots will be led and developed in America and they'll do the work, and then you need to add robots into productivity into the equation. There can be a lot of validations and justifications. This is a very simple discussion on market cap sustenance by population. You could have a population of 1 and he's a genius and the rest are all machines and he's holding up an entire industry that he's overseeing. It's possible. You know, a small population, super smart and young, you know, bit difficult, I would argue, a bit difficult, but who knows? So as you get to there. So let's see your comments. What do you think? Where are you going to put your money? What do you think? What do you think? What do you think? India, Russia, Brazil, South Africa, USA, Japan, or the unspoken for, which we can do in another video, if you would like me to include the Middle East and other parts of Africa and Singapore and that like in a market cap, specific market cap, because we've introduced you to who has the commodity strength. You saw how many blues and reds and wins and second places. The likes of China, India, if you aggregated them all together, they were absolutely destroying America by market cap. If you would like to have an opportunity to give us more information and addend these spreadsheets, you're welcome to. Maybe we will think of a plan and make them open source available, and then you can put additional information in them. But before I make any promises on that account, where are you going to put your money? Do you trust a brick future currency, which is going to try and make itself more attractive to show up the debt-ridden dollar, or would you stay with the dollar? At what point do you pivot? You're all entitled to a pivot, not just Jay. We're all entitled to a pivot, he says. I'm going to put my ballerina shoes on next time. They're not called shoes, are they? What are they called? Anyway, I will do a couple of pirouettes for you in transgender pink, and I will pivot. I will tell you where I'm pivoting to, both in terms of currency, both in terms of macro indices that are investable, and where that capital formation is actually going. And you can find it all out in greater detail. We will discuss it, in our premium community, and we will release occasional free versions of this. If you hit us a like and give us a share. What did you learn most? What was the most interesting thing in doing or watching this video that you found out? I'm watching. Love silver, says one. Gold, get you some. Which Turkey, Vietnam, and Tanzania, says somebody. It's interesting to see Tanzania. Dar es Salaam, not far away. Or no, Zanzibar, which is the little relative. Vietnam, yeah. Turkey, good population. Mexico, that's good friend-shoring place. We didn't discuss it for America, because America is still going to be a dominant, wealthy nation. This is not a knock America video, by the way. It's a dominant, wealthy nation for an extended period. It takes a while for these things to taper, unless a banking hack, a cyber attack. Yeah, unless, of course, that were to happen. But Mexico could be a great friend-shoring, local, increase the trade apart from immigrants coming through the bottom. That could be a great option. It's going to be just awesome. South Africa can do okay. ZA Butch says King. Yeah, it can do okay. South Africa can do okay. Tiny bit pricey, but I think it's got gold. It's got platinum. Maybe the bit of rating on the metals. Re-rating, it's going to do all right. Prepping for another Great Depression, says somebody. Yes, but where you're going to invest your money when you survive that, because we're going to see you survive. 1,500 plus ounces of silver, enough for the average millennial. 1,500, yes, that's a good start. It's a good sluggers match. Call me when you talk in tons. That's what I say. You need a big hole in the ground. Call me when you talk in tons. Then we'll become best of pals. Spread it around. Okay, awesome, guys. Mexico, Brazil, and Russia, says Mal Davies. That's a good combination. Tesla comment. So, Tesla gets results on the 25th. Any comments now would be a little bit a little bit dangerous, that close to the big events. So Tesla will have, it's not part of this stream. in truth, but Tesla will have an event. We'll have events involving news that'll come out on the 25th. It did just make a head and shoulder downside target. So you have a combination of making a target and a major news event coming very, very shortly. So it could get quite a rally and everyone could go, yeah, look, we're back. Oh, if the already priced in bad news is kind of already priced in and say, yeah, it's bad, but not that bad. We kind of expected that now. We've lowered our expectations. Okay, guys, next time, if you want to be part of our community, go to themarketsniper.com. Building wealth in reset times is the game. We got taken long into the euro knock of all colors. We actually long the euro with a limit order. That's right. On a small time frame, we'll tell you if it makes any money and we'll admit it if it doesn't. Until next time, I will catch you later. Thank you for coming onto the live stream. If you want more of these, give it a share, smash us a like, and leave us a comment. Where are you putting your money? Which indices, which nation states are you going to put your money in? Are you going to go live in Neom or the edge cities, the 6G coffin pods? There you do. I'm doing a sales pitch for you. Or are you just going to invest there because a lot of money's going in there? The wealth is returning to the Tigris and the Euphrates. What about those stock markets all going up? Is technology all going to be done out of Tel Aviv? What's going to happen? Tell me your answers on whether I'm right or wrong. What would you change? Thank you so much. We catch you next time. Salute.